let's talk about Caitlin Clark and the idea of a government probe or an investigation into hostile work environments being conducted by the government because of the actions that the league itself and some of the players have.
What's unfolding behind the curtain in the WNBA right now goes far beyond the game itself. And this isn't just about matchups or rivalries, but about influence, financial stakes, and reactions at the highest levels of the league that have executives moving in ways we haven't seen before. While the spotlight has been on the hard fouls Caitlin Clark has absorbed on the court, the deeper story allegedly centers on what her representation has been coordinating out of public view and the federal attention surrounding it, which may only be the opening chapter, because for weeks I've been tracing the digital trail connected to this situation. And what I'm about to outline isn't pulled from press conferences or polished league statements, but from conversations happening inside executive boardrooms, agency circles, and even federal offices, and when the league's top revenue draw appears to be consistently targeted while being backed by one of the most influential management teams in professional sports, matters can escalate quickly. Many outlets aren't emphasizing that this doesn't appear accidental, or like emotional fans reacting online, but instead suggests something more deliberate, professional maneuvering at the highest level, and Clark's camp may have responded in a way that has league leadership deeply unsettled. So before breaking down the exclusive details gathered, make sure you're subscribed because this kind of behind-the-scenes breakdown isn't easy to find. We're about to examine how claims of organized targeting escalated into a situation drawing federal scrutiny, and why the league's strategy of staying quiet may have dramatically backfired. So let's carefully walk through the timeline because the order of events reveals layers that stretch far beyond mainstream headlines, involving locker room acknowledgments, agent communication networks, and mounting external pressure that appears to have been building for months. The tone of the online debate about Clark's treatment shifted significantly once players themselves began speaking more openly, moving beyond vague social media hints or subtle interview remarks to reported admissions of coordinated approaches discussed inside locker rooms across the league. And Sophie Cunningham, now Clark's teammate with the Indiana Fever, offered what some consider one of the most revealing accounts by acknowledging that during her time with the Phoenix Mercury, conversations in the locker room often centered on showing her what the W really is when preparing to face Clark. Discussions that were not framed as ordinary defensive intensity, but described as strategic talks about setting a tone, asserting physical presence, and forcing Clark to adapt quickly to the league style. And this is where the narrative shifts again as industry sources begin outlining a very different version of what may have been unfolding behind closed doors.
To grow legs, because a lot of people is going to speak out about this, and I'm telling y'all right now, people from behind the scenes sources have told me as a recent, now I wasn't gonna say nothing, that Caitlin Clark agent could possibly allegedly.
That information isn't rumor or internet chatter, but comes from individuals directly connected to the professional representation networks operating inside the league, shedding light on how the situation transitioned from a heated sports debate into something drawing federal scrutiny at remarkable speed. Looking closely at the timeline, for weeks and months viewers watched repeated physical plays involving Caitlin Clark with little visible disciplinary response from the league, including Chindi Carter's viral blindside collision, Diamond DeShields charging in with the force of a football defender, Marina Mabrey delivering a shove critics compared to something outside routine competition, and Tina Charles appearing to strike Clark from behind in a moment some casual viewers overlooked, but replay footage highlighted. And each of these incidents was not only debated on social media but reportedly reviewed, archived, and dissected by professionals who understand documentation, legal positioning, and strategic pressure beyond the hardwood. When representation teams with deep resources begin compiling patterns instead of isolated clips, the conversation shifts. And when outlets like the Wall Street Journal frame the broader discussion in terms of civil rights implications, that rarely happens by coincidence, because narratives at that scale are often shaped deliberately and placed on influential platforms by individuals who understand how public perception moves and more critically, how federal institutions begin paying attention.
Clark got assaulted in the very first damn game. We done seen countless attacks on Caitlin Clark, and I'm not even finna go through the jacket of playing the videos. We all know what happened at CC. Now, what is crazy about all of this is that the Wall Street Journal, wrote an article earlier this week kind of explaining Caitlin.
The civil rights dimension is not being framed as simple media spin, but, according to individuals familiar with the situation, represents a calculated legal pathway because when an athlete's representation includes former White House advisors and attorneys experienced in federal civil rights enforcement, the objective shifts from disputing foul calls or debating physical play to establishing a documented pattern and preparing formal arguments. And what reportedly raised concern among league leadership was the moment Senator Jim Banks sent a formal letter to WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, which insiders did not view as routine political commentary since the timing appeared deliberate, the language carefully structured, and the purpose aimed at creating an official record that could make it significantly harder for federal agencies to overlook the matter. When a sitting U.S. senator characterizes an athlete's treatment as a potential civil rights issue rather than simply a sports conduct concern, it can trigger internal review mechanisms within federal institutions. And once those procedural reviews begin, they do not simply vanish because the United States Department of Justice does not need a televised announcement or press conference to initiate a preliminary review, request information, or quietly examine patterns. And if you believe the situation is already clear, the layers beneath the surface are reportedly far more complex, with financial implications alone substantial enough to leave league executives uneasy. What much of the mainstream sports media has not fully tied together is the economic scale of Caitlin Clark's impact, as she represents one of the most dramatic revenue surges the WNBA has ever experienced, with reports pointing to merchandise spikes exceeding 600%, viewership jumps of more than 170% in games featuring her, and WNBA League Pass subscriptions climbing well over 300%. And those figures are not just strong growth metrics, but indicators of structural reliance. Because when a league's expansion strategy becomes heavily centered on a single athlete's drawing power, the stakes fundamentally change. If that same player is repeatedly involved in high-impact physical play that risks injury, the issue shifts from competition to financial exposure, making it no longer simply about rivalry or toughness, but about protecting the asset driving the surge, which is what makes this moment different from anything the league has faced before. As the situation involving Clark has grown beyond on-court controversy, from debates over officiating and physical play into a broader narrative being framed around federal oversight and civil rights scrutiny, with high-level representation applying strategic pressure that appears to be moving the matter into legal and institutional territory. And if momentum continues in this direction, it could mark a pivotal moment in how professional sports leagues address discrimination, player protection, and accountability moving forward.